Tonight's farbrengen is Ulei Nishmas Rabbi Avram Alter Ben Menashe Asil Chaim Neshama Shavan Aliyah and Gute Better and have to find for all good L'chaim V'racha. We're not living in a very simple time period. On the one hand, we see miracles and wonders beyond logic and nature. We see the miracles and wonders that really are of the era of Mashiach. On the other hand, we see a lot of tragedy. We see a lot of people who have lost their homes, who have lost loved ones, who were wounded. And the truth is that every one of us, Kol Flan, goes through various ups and downs. Maybe, God forbid, not like losing a loved one, but we all have our ups, we have our downs. And tonight, God willing, we're going to learn one of the most powerful messages from this week's Torah portion of how to not only survive a challenge, but to grow from it and to thrive from it, and how to really channel the negative energy and to make something positive out of that energy. So this week's Torah portion talks about the laws of the red heifer. Torah says that Moshe Rabbeinu had a similar question to the question I just mentioned, how to deal with tragedy, how to deal with calamity, and we'll learn how God responded to Moshe with silence. We'll learn that what God was conveying to Moshe Rabbeinu with the silence itself. So let's begin. The Torah says that Moshe Rabbeinu was talking to God in Parshat Emor a few weeks ago in the Torah portion, and God was telling Moshe Rabbeinu about the various kinds of impurity. Ritual impurity, coming in contact with a dead reptile causes one kind of impurity. Touching someone who has come in contact with this dead reptile is another kind of lesser impurity. And then the Torah talks about the most severe kind of impurity, which is coming in contact with a dead body. Someone touches a dead body or is present in the room when the soul departs. So because the godly soul, because the neshama, has left the body, so the body now has something called tuma, impurity. The Hebrew word for impurity means closed. It means there's a film, there's a screen, there's a concealment, that you no longer see any of the soul in the body. So that's what tuma, impurity, means. There's a concealment, you don't see any soul. So that was the discussion that God was having with Moses, and Moshe Rabbeinu telling him about the various kinds of impurity. And the Torah says, in the Medrash in Parshas Emor, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu, when he got to the part about the Avi Avot, Avi Avot means the father of fathers of impurity, the worst kind of impurity, which is the dead body. And someone who touches the dead body becomes what's called a father of impurity. Interesting parenthetical thing. The Rebbe will always talk about the guy in the Vatican as the father of impurity, like not someone that we need to respect. Anyways, where is he from? Chicago or something? Anyways, so
who washes the body in a mikveh gets grandfather tumor.
Anyone who touches a dead body becomes a father of impurity. The dead body itself is called the father of fathers of impurity. Nowadays, everyone's impure. Nowadays, everyone's impure. But when Moshe Rabbeinu was told by God about this kind of impurity, God didn't tell him how to become pure from it. Every time God told Moshe Rabbeinu the kind of impurity, God said to him, "This is what you do to become purified from this scenario." But when God got to this scenario of the dead body, God didn't say anything. And Moshe Rabbeinu's face becomes darkened. Some say his face turned yellow, some say his face turned green, some say his face turned red. Moshe Rabbeinu was very upset, and God didn't answer him then. God only answered him in this week's Torah portion. God said to him, remember how you asked me what will happen if someone touches a dead body, how to become pure? I didn't tell you then, I'm going to tell you now. This is what you need to do. What you need to do is, you need to take a cow which is completely red, you slaughter the cow. After you slaughter the cow is burnt. Then you take the ashes, and then you take a cup, You put in the cup water from a wellspring, a living stream of water, and you take the ashes and you put the ashes on top of the water in the cup, and then you mix it together, and the person has become in contact with the dead body. You sprinkle upon him from this mixture of ashes and water. 3 days minimum after he comes in contact with the body, you sprinkle him once. 7 days after his contact with the dead body, you sprinkle him a second time. The next day, the 8th day, he immerses himself into a mikveh, into a ritual pool of water, and he is then, as soon as the sun sets, he is pure. That's the answer.
But the sprinkler becomes impure.
Right.
But the transfer doesn't vanish.
Different subject, a bigger subject. The question for tonight is, Baruch, why did God not respond to Moshe when Moshe asked God, how does he become pure? And God's quiet.
Cliffhanger.
Exactly. What was the point of that?
You want to give Moshe time to think what the answer is.
So we're going to see tonight. It's very interesting about. We're going to see tonight how the silence itself teaches us something. The silence is Moshe Rabbeinu is asking God the question of all questions. What's the meaning of this total calamity of death? What does that mean? What is it? What's the purpose of that? What is the meaning of that? And God responds with silence. The silence of God represents how sometimes we're able to live with questions, open questions, and sometimes you're not supposed to try to answer a question. God forbid, someone is in mourning. A lot of people are very quick. They go to the house of a mourner and they say, everything that God does is for the best. Some people are very quick to say, the soul's in a better place, it's in heaven. Right away they're ready with their cliches, and they're ready with their... and it's all true, and it's real. It's not that it's not true. But the Torah says when you go to a mourner's house, you're not allowed to speak. You're only allowed to speak as soon as the mourner speaks first. And the reason you can't speak until the mourner speaks first is because what your role is in visiting the person who has suffered the calamity is just to give him a space to express his feelings. In other words, when God was silent in his conversation with Moshe Rabbeinu, God was basically telling us about the zechus, about the right of a person to have pain. The right that we are, that's something called a justified pain. There's something called being correct in expressing pain. And not just for extreme scenarios like a death, but also, God forbid, relationship that fails, someone has a dream and their business doesn't work out. We're human beings. So having a feeling of disappointment, having a feeling of being upset is a normal feeling. And it's something the Torah says that, that feeling, the response to it is silence. God's silence represents that you have to leave space to the person the Talmud says it this way, the main role of a person visiting the mourner is his silence. You're there to give them a space to feel how they feel. And that's we can't talk. Your silence is the recognition that they need to feel how they feel. And you're giving them a space to feel how they feel. A lot of people, when they lose someone, they go through different emotions. They deny their feelings, they say it didn't happen. Then they get angry, why is this happening to me? What did I do wrong? And then they feel guilty, why they feel so upset. There was a guy who he sent his son to the supermarket, and the son, on the way to the supermarket, got run over by a car on Old Sloan. So the father was understandably not just distraught, but very guilty, felt very guilty. And someone suggested that he speak to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe told him that life and the opposite of life is very sacred to God. And you cannot think that such an important thing to God would be so trivial to leave to something happenstance. In other words, it's not just because you sent your son to the market, that's why he died. That's not why he died. It's not an accident that he died. It's not because of you sent him to the market. Had you not sent him to the market, or you had sent him to the market, either way he would have died. It's not because of an accident that someone dies. Life and death, chas shalom, are very precious to Hashem, and therefore it's not something which just because of an accident that something happens. How many years ago was it? You're scared. 6 years ago. What time of year was it? When did it happen?
In Europe, sir.
In Lag BaOmer.
Lag BaOmer.
Lag BaOmer, I started to
Get better. It's such a scary thing, and just like at the right moment, Menachem came, and it shows us that our lives are in the hands of Hashem, and so the first thing that we learn in this Torah portion is that that God forbid there's a calamity, to feel it. You're allowed to feel. And this is the wisdom of the Torah's prescription of mourning. It's not just to let the person get back to himself. Even though that it's true that everything that God does is for good, and even though it's true that the soul goes to a better place, but the idea of mourning is Hashem is telling you need to feel how you feel. Don't be macho. A lot of people try to be macho and not cry when they lose someone, and they bury it under their chest, but they suffer a lot later. The Torah's period of mourning is meant to give a space to the person to express their feelings. That's just step one. And God's Son tells us that sometimes the best answer is not with words. And step two is, not only are you feeling the pain, step two is you accept it. And you go back into life despite the pain. And this week's Torah portion talks about step three. Step three is where not only have you expressed your pain, and not able to live with your pain, but you're able to use your pain itself in a positive direction. Step three is called tikkun. Tikkun means to rectify, to elevate, and to use that negative feeling itself towards something positive. The Hebrew word for cow, para, also means to be fruitful. Red is something which indicates life. So there's a lot of life in the red cow. Red cow represents a lot of life. The waters of the red cow, the waters that they're sprinkled to, also represent life. Water is something that, when scientists are looking for life on other planets, the first thing they look for is there water there? Nothing can survive that water. A baby is born in water. Majority of the body is water. Majority of the world is water. So water is about life. Ashes, on the other hand, ashes represent the end of something. Ashes represent that there's something that is ceased, that something was and is no longer. So the Torah says the solution to the ashes is to mix them with water. What that means is that the calamity itself is not the end of the story. Wherever the sun sets in one place, it's rising somewhere else. This ending of something is beginning something else somewhere else. The reason a baby cries, Chassidic masters say, is because a baby has left a world where there's no selfishness and there's no ego. It's entered a world where there is jealousy and there is enmity. And a baby is born, the baby cries, Chassidic masters say, is because the baby is experiencing, the soul of the baby is experiencing, this isn't fun. And we're all excited, but for the baby's left something. The baby has now ended the life in heaven. And in a similar way, when someone passes away, the Hebrew word for passing away is ptir. Ptir means to leave. They've left here and they've gone somewhere else. They haven't ended. So, just now I was in New York on Sunday. You know how you go to JFK or LAX? Not as much, but in JFK they have a lot of these guys who are like, "Hey, can I give you a ride?" And you're like, I'll just take an Uber. No, the Uber is 30, I'll take 15 and 4, and then they're doing deals with you. And this guy, I'm also very naive from Massachusetts, and this guy was Israeli, didn't say, what could be the problem? Anyways, it was actually a better deal than the Uber. Anyways, so this guy gives me a ride, and he shares me a story that I found very personally meaningful, because I had a different ending to a very similar story. One of my children came to the hospital. It was Friday night, so I had to walk to the hospital. And so I got to the hospital, the doctors were saying that the heart rate of the baby's gone down because the baby's wrapping the umbilical cord around his neck. And it's very scary. And make all kinds of promises to God, and all kinds of thoughts, all kinds of feelings, all kinds of prayers. And thank God my son is okay. This guy didn't have the same story, unfortunately. This guy, he said he had 2 daughters, and he had a son. He prayed to God to have a son. And he was so happy when his wife was pregnant with a boy. The wife is pregnant with a boy, he's so excited, he's so thankful to God. And then he comes to the hospital for delivery, and unfortunately, his son didn't make it. Same issue, with his son wrapping the cord around his neck, and his son died. And he said that he had a picture. His son was a beautiful kid, and he took a picture of him, and he kept the picture. His wife didn't want to see the picture. His wife didn't want to have anything to do with the baby and the burial, with anything. Halacha says that God forbid the baby dies, needs to be circumcised, and his wife didn't want to have anything to do with it. This whole thing. He himself said that he was so full of anger and hatred to God for 12 years. And you meet someone, and taxi drivers aren't known to be the most honest people, right? This guy was talking to me. Every word was from the soul. Every word was from the soul. 12 years, the guy felt, understandably, hatred to God. He asked for a baby, and and anger. One day,
You were sent as a shliach to help this situation.
fortunately, I had a long flight and I was tired, and I just was listening because that's what learning the Torah portion. That's what God didn't answer Moses, right? There's a time that's supposed to say anything, and I was listening. He says that 12 years pass, and this guy asks him to give a ride to someone else. The guy asked him to give a ride to him to go to someplace in Mill Basin. There's some Kabbalist in Mill Basin. He didn't say what it was. And when he gets to Mill Basin, the Kabbalist meets his friend, and the Kabbalist says, "I want to talk to you too." He says, "No, I'm just a driver. I'm not part of this whole Kabbalah thing." So he's like, "No, I need to talk to you." And I don't know if this Kabbalist had some kind of divine inspiration, or his friend told him. I have no idea. But be it as it may, the Kabbalist says to him, "I want to talk to you about your son." He says, "I want to tell you that your son was a perfectly righteous soul, and he only had to come back to the world for a moment. And that's why he came. And you could be angry, and you could be full of all feelings, and no one could judge you, but you have to realize that there is a plan, that there is someone who wrote your son's story, and there is a purpose of why he came here. You may not like it, you may not agree with it, and you have to realize also," he said, the gentleman was telling this to me because I was telling him I want to go to the Ohel. And he's like, "Why?" This was what he said. He said, the Kabbalah said to him, you're trapping your son's soul in the world, because your son wants to go to the higher world. And this guy told me that every shirt, every pair of pants, every time he wore clothing, he put a picture of his son in the clothing. His wife never saw the picture. She wanted to see the picture. But he put that picture, and every time he put on his clothing, he put on the picture, he wanted to wear it. And the Kabbalah said to him, "You're encumbering the soul," which is true. That's what Kabbalah says. Visiting a tzaddik, asking for blessings, is a whole different thing. But he didn't know about that. Anyways, my point is something else. My point is that he said that after he met this Kabbalist, the 12 years, it's a story of a soul. He's telling me, he's pouring his soul out. He's telling me his story of his soul. After 12 years of anger, the Kabbalist said resonated. It's not that he suddenly became the Baba Sali. He's a perfect. He's not a tzaddik by any means. But now he was able to put on tefillin again. He's able to keep Shabbos again. He's able to keep kosher again. He's able not to be at war with God. Where the Kabbalist said, channeled somehow what he was feeling, and gave him a tikkun, gave him a elevated those negative feelings. Rabbi Simon Jacobson, he shared a similar story, that he was once visiting London, and there's a guy in the synagogue who was like the life of the party. All the kids are gathering around him, and he's giving lollies to the kids, and he's so popular with all the kids. And he asked this guy, English people are known to be so friendly. Why are all these kids you're so warm to all these kids? So he said something very, 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 very profound. He said that after he lost his wife and his children in the Holocaust, he didn't want to. He was completely emotionally paralyzed, and he had somehow made it to the Rebbe. And when he made it to the Rebbe, uniquely, he was then able to cry. And when he cried, the Rebbe said to him, he told the Rebbe that he can't handle the pain. And the Rebbe said to him, the love you have for your family, the warmth you have for the people you lost, for your wife, for your children, is sacred. It's a holy feeling. And that feeling is something you shouldn't allow Hitler to obliterate. That's a holy feeling. That has to stay. And the reason why you feel so much pain is because you're keeping all that love and all that warmth inside of yourself. That has to go somewhere. It has to be used for something. You have to use that love and use that warmth and give that to children that you meet. Give them that good feeling that you have. A friend of mine, his son was born with a heart condition, and he passed away very young, Simchas Torah. and he and his wife were talking about their loss, and he mentioned to his wife how at another scenario that they had, they got an answer from the Rebbe, not as terrible as this scenario, but similar. That they were going through something, and the Rebbe told them King Solomon says there's a greater light that comes from the darkness, a greater light that comes after the darkness, from the darkness. So his wife said, "You know what? I'm going to go back to teaching." She was a very successful teacher, but after she started having children of her own, she's like, "Why should I teach other children? I need to take care of my own children." But after this calamity, she lost her child. She went back to teaching. She said that one day, one of the girls in her class asked her, "Why do you love us so much? Why do you love us so much?" And she said, "They don't realize that it's not only a love to them; it's a love to my son." That's what she said. So this is the meaning of the ashes and the water being mixed together, and the response to Moshe Rabbeinu. First, there's a silence, there's acceptance, and then there has to be the water. If you put the ashes in first, it's invalid. To put the water in first. In other words, the goal is not the negative feelings. The goal is not the ashes. The goal is not the ending. The whole point of creation is to bring Mashiach, is to bring light to the world, and therefore the ashes are there, but the ashes are on top of the water. If you don't use living waters from a stream, it's not kosher. If you use other water, it's not kosher. Put the ashes in first, it's not kosher. The mixture of ashes and water is that the ashes are on top of the water. That the goal is, the main thing is the life that's created from the negative feeling. And we all unfortunately have different things that go on in our lives that put us down. And the district Torah portion is telling us where have you gone with that? Where have those ashes brought you? You, God forbid, got in a fight with your spouse. Has that created some new kind of depth relationship? You had this dream in your business, you could do A, B, and C, and the dream didn't happen. So where did you go with that? What happened as a result? We don't know everything. Scientists have all kinds of unanswered questions. No one knows everything. So the role of our questions and our angst and our disappointments is not for the sake of us getting the answer something. That's not the idea. The idea is that energy is supposed to take us somewhere. There's a guy who made a loan fund in memory of his son, and the fund was very successful. A very big fund. And someone asked him, "Your fund's going on for years, but the Torah says that Hashem made a decree upon the heart that a person who passes away is forgotten from the heart after a year. We don't have the same feelings after a year. So how come you have the same feelings for your son after so many years? Hashem made a decree that the heart loses the feelings after a year." So he says, very, very, very profound answer. He said, Hashem made a decree about the heart, about the emotions. You never really forget though. For your mind remembers. So this is the Torah is telling us this week, that if there's ashes look like the ending of life. There's something that's supposed to begin as a result of that. There's something that's supposed to give you something. It's meant to create something. Yes, there's an ending, but there's also beginning. The sun has set, yes, but the sun is also rising somewhere else. So this is the. God forbid we shouldn't have any calamities and shouldn't have any angst, any frustration. But we should know that when the things we've seen in our life already that have brought us down, as Baal Shem Tov taught, it's meant for something. I'll conclude with this. Baal Shem Tov taught, it says in the Torah, it's a time of trouble for Jacob, and he was saved from it. Baal Shem Tov taught, it's not that Jacob was saved from the problem, but he was saved because of the problem. He was saved. The problem itself is the source of the salvation. Baal Shem Tov says that if there's a time of trouble, the time of difficulty, the time of ashes, the ashes are meant to be on top of the water. The ashes are meant to be something that create something new out of those ashes. Some new life has to be born from the ashes. It's not ashes for the sake of ashes. Ashes are mixed with the water. Chaim, we should see B'suras Tevis. We should see good news in our lives. We shouldn't have to deal with any of this thing we're talking about. But we should know that things in the past that happened to us. We think to ourselves things in the past that happened to us. What do we take from? Where do we go from? How do we grow from it? What did it create in us?